That's not true. Now I wrecked the display too. No, I need it because I'm going to read you something. And to read it, I need two hands, or at least a podium in a hand. Also, it's hot over there. Okay, hi. How's everybody doing? Nice to be back in California, in Huntington Beach. I was looking for a place to cool off. This is it. Because I've been 2 weeks in 100-degree weather every single day, driving in a car, in traffic, every single day. So I'm, pretty well futzed by this time. So I've got my usual stick here, which is this. I'm going to chat with you a little bit about what I'm doing, tell you what I think you need to know, hopefully not too much of that. Try and bring you up to date on where I'm going with my so-called life. And then I'm going to read to you something that's not in print, but not what you're thinking. It's something different. And then we'll do our favorite thing, which is the Q&A. You ask me questions, I provide answers. It does not go the other way. You ask me questions. So, first of all, that's my publishing schedule for the next 6 months. I was a lie. It's my publishing schedule for the next year. At any rate, is this impressive or what? Well, it's impressive. But aside from that, it's also misleading because most of what's on here consists of books from Cemetery Dance in the Word Void series, books from Grimo Press, my Web Druids site, for special editions of Wish Song, and I guess Elfstone's finally came out, and some other stuff, Well, Scar Invasion's on here, you already know about that one. So the only thing that's on here that you really need to know about, I'm going to talk to you about just briefly. First of all, as you probably know, I'm wrapping up the Shanra series, and I've got 2 more books to do it. There's 4 altogether. Scar Invasion's number 2. The other 2 will come out June 19 and 20. So you can count on that. I know the 3rd one is coming out because I wrote it. It's done. It's in the hands of my editor, using her filthy, grimy little paws to mark it all up with a red pen. Then it'll come back to me to be changed over. I'll start writing a new one in the fall, and after that, I will go to a stasis station where I will not do anything more unless I feel like it. But I do have plans to do some follow-ups to the prehistory of the world. I'm already getting lots of suggestions about what else I could do from everybody. So probably I won't run out of any ideas anytime soon about where to go with Shanra next. But in the meantime, how many people like and have read anything in Magic Kingdom? Stop. Writing me. I'm doing a new Magic Kingdom book as soon as I'm done with this current set of books, and it will come out in 2021, which is 3 years. So just be patient. It's coming. I promise you it's coming. I don't have a title. I doubt if I even have a plot, actually. But in any case, I'm going to do it because I know you've been patient. I appreciate that. I'm sorry that I've been derailed by so many other projects and obsessed with getting Shanra done, but there you go. So that will be coming out then. That's not on this list, but it's mentioned here as Untitled Kingdom 1 of 2. Don't ask me. I didn't do it. So the other thing that I'm working on right now that you do need to know is this. Street Freaks. Street Freaks is a standalone book, one of those things that every so often I get a wild hair and decide I need to do something that doesn't do anything to do with anything else I've ever done, ever. This is really a wild hair because it isn't even a fantasy. It is a futuristic thriller. And the most thing I say about this is I'll give you a quick rundown here in Hollywood speak in a minute. I'm in LA. But this is, Street Freaks is going to come out on October 2nd of this year. It's done, it's finished, it's over. I'm doing this on my own because I want to know what that was like. You know, mostly I write books, I turn them in, that's the last I see of them until they show up like this. I thought, well, you know, you shouldn't die without trying to just do it, self-publication, do it yourself. Well, I'm not even doing that much because I've got somebody else that's doing the work. Stop. But I wanted to see, you know, what you have to go through to get it done. The publicity part, the marketing part, the contacting of the distributors, getting books out. And I learned something. Never again. It's an enormous amount of work. And more work than I'm up to these days. So I'm very happy with the book, and I'm glad I found this out about this and so forth. And everybody seems to be very excited about it, and they've been reading these little things, which are chap books, first 2 chapters of the book. I'll have this out tonight, so please feel free to pick it up. Read the back, it says right there, a piece from the book that will give you a good idea. This is a case of Blade Runner meets Fast and Furious meets Armageddon's Children. So what does that mean? Street freaks, street racing, and what about, and street crazy? Blade Runner anyway, street blades. So it's that kind of story about the future. That's all I'm going to say, but I don't think you'll be unhappy when you see what's in there, because it's a typical Brooks book. They never change. They're all the same. I just put new covers on them. So that is the next project that's actually going to come down the pike. In addition to that, I'm going to do a collection of short fiction, my short fiction, which has been out there for a while, some of which you may have read in other anthologies, other collections, some of which has only been online and nowhere else. That you may never have seen, but I've done 3 genres that have never appeared anywhere there. And those, when people find out about it, they always say the same thing. Why isn't it in print? Well, because there's only 3 short stories that you print those up. So we're going to do it. I'm going to put it all together, and I'm going to publish it. I'm not exactly sure when the book will come out. Let's say in the next 12 to 24 months. So you can look for that. Doesn't have a title or anything else, but it'll be on the web. The centerpiece of that will be what I'm going to read you from tonight. A new piece of work in Word and Void. I have not done anything in Word and Void in 20 years because really I didn't have any intentions of ever doing anything in Word and Void again. And I've always said, man, I don't know, you know, that's such a perfect set of books, those 3 in their cyclical format. I don't know, I'm afraid anything else I do would never measure up anyway. However, you know, I thought it over and I thought, maybe I should think that again. It's kind of miss it, I'd do it again. So I am writing what essentially is a novella. So that's about 120 pages worth of this. So it's sort of like a big short story. And the big short story will be the centerpiece. And it will follow very much the same format that if you've read this before, you've read the Word and Void, you know what it's all about. And the piece I'm reading from tonight tells you what happens to the gentleman protagonist who will become a Knight of the Word when he goes to Wales and goes to the Fairy Glen and meets a lady who is, of course, the spokesperson for the Word, and who discovers that he will be a Knight of the Word, but not the same as, say, John Ross or any of the others. So, this is the read. On his return to the Fairy Glen, he found a fisherman occupying the near bank, a man clothed in woodsman's garb and wearing an old fishing hat. He wore boots, and his pole was ancient and hand-wrought, with a strange reel attached, the like of which Jack had never seen before. The man stood on the bank and cast, then slowly reeled in his line, hitched up his rod, and cast again. Jack watched for a while and then walked over. "Catch anything?" he asked. The man glanced at him and smiled, but made no response. His beard was thick and his hair long. His face seamed and his skin brown from the sun. He was of indeterminate age, neither old or young, but some of both. Jack waited for the fisherman to say something, but he went back to fishing as if Jack wasn't there. Jack turned away at the sound of a high, fierce shriek, searched for it in the woods as a spike of fear ran up his spine, and glanced up at the rising full moon. There was a fresh chill in the air, and suddenly Jack felt a deep-seated sense of uneasiness. He looked back at the fisherman, but he was gone. Standing alone now on the banks of the stream, Jack watched the moonlight skip and dance along the rims of the waves and through the ripples caused by his anxious rush. An owl hooted somewhere nearby, a haunting sound that lingered as an echo. Off to his right, a long dark shadow moved within the brush, staying just out of view. And then the fairies appeared. There was no question about what he was seeing, no doubt in his mind. An explosion of bright forms appeared out of the waterfall, silvery, twinkling apparitions that soared above the waters of the stream and skipped along its surface with unrestrained abandon. Bells sounded from all around, and bright bursts of light emanated from within the stream's flow, as if something living in its depths was seeking to break free. Jack might have turned and run if he had felt threatened in any way, but he did not. Rather, he felt embraced, welcomed, brought home to a place he had never known existed, but had always been searching for. The feeling was so unexpectedly wondrous and emotionally fulfilling that he suddenly burst into tears, yearning for it to continue so that he could immerse himself in it completely, desperately wanting it to be true and not imagined, wanting it to be for him. Then the lady appeared, a diaphanous gowned bit of shadow and light, beautiful beyond anything he had ever imagined. She floated above the churning surface of the stream, the fairies circling all about her as she approached, borne on the night air and the crest of the white-capped waves. A procession formed as the lady neared, a retinue falling into place behind her, reaching down to lift the train of her robes and to smooth the waters of the stream so her slippers might remain dry. Jack felt her eyes on him, this spirit creature not wholly substantive, not completely there, and her gaze warmed him. He saw the kindness in her face and instantly felt his blood rush to his head in response. Then abruptly, she was standing before him, changed entirely, become as solid as he was, as real as their surroundings, and no longer so much a creature of another world. Her retinue disappeared, become invisible in an instant. The waters of the stream lost their bright shimmer, the bells stilled, and the fairy glen became as it had been when he had first walked down, as if none of what he had just witnessed had ever happened. "Will you serve me?" she asked in a voice so warm and musical it brought him to his knees. He could not speak for a moment. Her request was a naked plea that lacked a frame of reference and demanded explanation, and yet offered neither. At the same time, it was so compelling, so impossibly irresistible, that he could not envision a way in which he would refuse. In those 4 words, he found a promise of the life commitment he had always been looking for. He found, too, the answers to all his questions about his childhood brush with death, about Sinisippi Park and Pick and the dragon that would have brought him down had he not defeated it. With an eager willingness that frightened him, he whispered, "I will serve you." The voice did not seem his own, and the words appeared to come from somewhere else. Yet the lady reached down and stroked his cheek, a gentle brushing of fingers that reached deep into his heart. "Let it be so then, Jack McCall. As of this moment, you are a knight of the word. You must never forget what you are. You must never forsake me." Then she lifted him up to stand before her and touched his face once more. This time images began to appear before his eyes, a long continuous stream of history and story that revealed in detail all that had gone before and of which he would now become a part. Knowledge flowed into him and took root. It swept before his eyes swiftly and without slowing, and yet he knew instinctively he would never forget any of it. The images seemed to last only a few moments, but when they were gone, he glanced skyward and saw that the moon had moved all the way across the sky. Know, brave knight, that your service is to be unique. It will be required once, and once only. You will need to be vigilant always, because they will come for you and will seek to destroy you, but this must not be allowed. For you must be kept safe for that one high service you have been chosen to perform." "What service?" he started to ask, but her fingers silenced his lips with a touch. It is not yet time for you to know. Go from me now. Go to the life you will make for yourself. Go to the family that will become your own. We will not speak again until the need to do so has arrived. Her fingers found his chin and lifted. Know this too, Jack McCall. All brave knights who serve the word must suffer the dreams of the damned. All must dream of a future in which they have failed in the present. For most, those dreams are of a future that lies years away. But you, and you alone, will dream of a future that will come to pass in your own lifetime. A future of what will befall you and yours if you fail in your service. Be wary of your dreams, brave knight, for they will be treacherous and misleading, and not all you dream will be as it seems. One last time, the fingers shifted across his face, this time coming to rest upon his eyes, closing them so that he felt himself drifting into such deep, inexorable slumber that he could do nothing but let it take him where it would. Sleep now, he heard her whisper, and he slept. When he came awake again, it was dawn, and he was alone in the fairy glen. He blinked and rose from his bed of damp grasses, shivering and confused. His thoughts returned to the events of the night now gone. And there, at the forefront of his memory, was his meeting with the lady. No other proof of it remained to substantiate that it had ever happened, yet he knew as surely as he knew his life was changed forever that he had had. He went back to his cottage abode and Arthur Henry and rested. He stayed for another day so it would not appear that his departure was too abrupt. And then he went home to discover how much of what the lady had told him would turn out to be true. Thanks, son. No, it's grandson. Thank you. Things are not going to go well for Jack, because in Brooks' book, they never do. And, when it gets bad, you know it's going to get worse. And Jack is going to be tested sorely before this is done, and is going to find out that things are, in fact, much worse than what he thought they were going to be, and much more is at stake than what he believed. So anyway, that will come out for 90 days only, count them, 90, starting in September. I think it's September 19th is a release date, but it will come out only one time for those 90 days online, and then it will go away again until it appears in print in the collection of short fiction somewhere down the road in the next 24 months, I hope. So there you have it. That is my publishing schedule. Where is my water? There we go. So anyway, that is my publishing schedule. That is my marching. Those are my marching orders. And I'm finishing up this book tour this week, except for a couple of local things I'm going to do in the Seattle area, Portland area. And then I will not go anywhere else for a while. But next year I'll be back out again, hopefully to visit places where people are friendly to me. Oh, but everybody's friendly. Everybody is good. It's so much appreciated. So, would you like to ask a few questions at this point before we go to the side? That was quick. All right, young man, what you got?
How long does it take you to write a book?
Good question. How long does it take me to write a book? It takes me these days about 8 months. Now, that isn't a hard and fast figure, but I'm just going to say, on average, about 8 months. Before then, it took forever to write a book, back in the old days, for the first couple. But that was due to my newness to the game. But now that I've laid bricks for almost 50 years, I'm starting to get the hang of it. You can do it much quicker these days. Yes, Lady.
Why did you decide you wanted to be a writer?
Why did I decide I wanted to be a writer? Seemed like a good idea at the time. No, the honest truth is that that's what I always wanted to do. I knew when I was 10 years old, this is what I was going to be. I was going to be a writer. And this was because I had a 4th grade teacher who encouraged me to continue to write short stories. because I had written some very strange ones, and I thought she was, either she was there to tell me it was time to get some help, or she was there to encourage me. She encouraged me, and she gave me good grades on it, and I thought, I can do this, and I did indeed publish when I was 13. In a little historical journal that was local, and I thought, hey, I'm on my way. 20 years later, yeah. But at the time, it seemed like a good idea. I just, then I went into law, and I stayed in the law for a while, so I wouldn't starve to death, because I wasn't good at not eating. So, I just think, I just can't imagine not writing it. If you're a writer, the writers I know, almost without exception, they would write even if nobody was buying their books, just because this is what you do. This is how you complete your life. This is what other people play golf, and, whatever. I write books. That's what I do for recreation. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So I understand that this Shannara is going to end.
The what?
The Shannara series is going to end.
What? Yeah, okay.
Will you revisit any of these books in the next few years, do you think?
Well, I'm sure I'll go back into the series. I just not, particularly into the prehistory where I left Measure of the Magic sort of hanging. But I don't know where, how far. I thought for a while I might live forever, but I was told that isn't going to happen. So I have to kind of, parse things out. And if Street Freaks does real well, then I'll probably think about doing something more with that. I've got to stick with Magic Kingdom because I missed it in that, I just don't know. I guess I'll wait and see what moves me at any given time, and that'll be what will guide me. Yeah. Yes, young lady.
Of all the books that you wrote, which was your favorite?
I'm very sorry, but I'm old and I can't hear well. Could you stand up and speak?
Of all the books that you wrote, which was your favorite?
Which is my favorite book? I always say that it's the one I'm working on right now, because that's one I'm most invested in at any given time. And then I used to say, oh, you're asking me to choose between my children. That's not fair. But in fact, it probably is. So I guess I will tell you that I'm very fond of Elfstones, number one. I think it's a good book. I'm particularly fond of Running with the Demon. I don't think I can write a better book than that one. But I'm invested in Magic Kingdom for Sale too, because Magic Kingdom for Sale is my autobiographical account of being a lawyer and going on to become a writer. Most people don't know that, but that's true. Yes, sir. Yeah, this time.
Last year,
20 Matchbox.
Last year in the summer, I was in London, and your book had just come out, and we went into the bookstore. We were both looking for a book we want to buy there to bring back. I was about to get it, and then I opened it up, and the paper and the typeface wasn't what I was used to, because I always had fond memories of opening towards the last page, and you talked about why you chose a particular typeface. And I was just wondering why it's different there. Is it just a different publishing?
I'm sorry, in this country we don't talk about England. England is old world thinking. I don't know, they all have their own approach to things, and they all have their own publication platforms and formats that they use. They license the right to publish the books, and then they can do what they want to about putting them out there as long as they don't mess with the content. And so apparently for that particular one or whatever, that's what they decided they wanted to see happen.
So you don't have input for...
I don't know. I've never tested that. I suppose I have input of some sort. But, I figure I don't need that in my life, so I let them do whatever they want to do is fine as long as they pay me.
Good philosophy.
At heart, I'm a very mercenary. Just pay me. Yes, sir.
You were talking about the prehistory. Could you shed a little more light on that?
Well, the prehistory is everything from Armageddon's Children forward. At this point, it's the Genesis of Shannara trilogy, and it is the duology of Bearers of the Black Staff and Measure of the Magic. That's it. That's the time of the Great Wars ending and civilization destroyed to the time when it starts to rebuild itself.
How do you say? How do you pronounce the name? Is it Gallifrey or the High Druid from Bremen's time?
How do I say it?
Yeah.
Well, how do you say Shannara?
I say Shannara.
You don't, do you? I know this because I had to deal with the showrunners in the TV show when I said, that's not how you say it.
Right.
Shannara is not how you say it. And they said, who says so? And I said, well, I say so. I wrote the books at Shannara. And they said, well, that's not the way your fans say it, so we're going with them. Yeah, Gallifile.
Okay.
Gallifile.
Are you gonna write about that time, maybe?
If I live long enough. I'm not sure how many books there are between, Measure of the Magic and First King, so I'm gonna have to figure that one out first.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll work on it. If I can, I would like to bring it up to at least to the time that Gallifile becomes the first of the Druids, leader of the Druids. Yes, sir.
I heard that when you were writing the character for Brienne Olmsford, I don't know if that's how you say it.
Yes, how?
You mentioned you were working on kind of the theme of redemption, and it kind of took you 6 books.
Yeah,
Can you tell?
endless.
Can you tell kind of what prompted that coming to mind, or if there's some events, or just something you were working through?
Yeah, sure. Transgression, redemption. That was the whole the central theme of those books that I wanted to explore. I wanted to look at how far you could transgress, how bad you could be, and still find redemption. And this all came from reading at the time I was doing it about a whole series of ministers, people of the cloth, who had violated their trust egregiously. And I thought, and then they were, then they say, well, I've been redeemed, it's okay. I found God again. I'm back to being a good guy. I'm thinking, nah. It doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. The public at large does not forgive you for your sins so simply. They do not. If you're found to violate the rules, they do not trust you either. So I wanted to say, okay, well, how far can you push this? And then, is it possible to ever be forgiven for certain things? So Brienne was a child who became an assassin, killed a lot of people. She was, caused a lot of trouble, and then she became a high druid. Well, a high druid, you'd think, right, forgiven, right? No. Then her own people will try to get rid of her, and finally succeeded in it after a fashion. But, it's just an interesting question for me, and I don't think I ever found out the answer sufficiently in my own mind about it, although she became a favorite character, so. Earlier than that, I was writing about the question of environmental protection, environmental destruction. That's become topical again lately. So these things come across. I just think that people identify with your books much more quickly if you're writing about topics that are central to their lives in some way. And so I always write about people making decisions. People have to make hard decisions. Decisions are hard because there's no good decision. There's only 2 bad decisions. What do you do? What's the content of your moral fiber in these situations? If you're backed against a wall, can you actually see your way through? And this is something everybody faces all the time on a daily basis, not in the extreme, but in small ways. And we all have to struggle with it. And I think, this country that requires that we take a good look at ourselves. So look at yourself. Yes, ma'am.
What is your writing process? Every writer has a different one. I know it's not something you say, oh, this is the writing process, but what is yours?
Well, it changes, number one. It's not what it used to be. It used to be more structured, organized, outlined everything. I was young and learning, so that was a good thing for me at that time. Now, 50 years later, I know it. I got it cool. So I'm basically more freelance in my approach to things. The trick is I know how long it takes me to write a book. So I work until the book is done, and it has to get done within a certain time, give or take 30 days. And I just know how to do that now because I've done it so many times, and I'm real comfortable with it. So I don't, basically that's why I say I can do in half the time. I can do twice as much in half the time as I used to be able to do because of the familiarity with the process. Yeah. All right, a couple more, then we'll go. Yes, sir.
I was curious, who is your favorite writer that brings you enjoyment, and who's your favorite writer that brings you peace?
Well, that would be me. What an obvious answer. I don't know. I don't know if I could single anybody out. I read a lot of different people, and I read whoever I'm reading at any given time, I'm searching for that book that will inspire me to do better. I'm looking for that writer who has done something that I want to do, or I wish I had done even more. That keeps you inspired when the energy level starts to drain off and you think, oh. So I'm always looking for those kinds of writers, and I'm finding them every so often, but I don't read in my field much, sometimes, but mostly I have to, because I keep getting sent books from publishers to give comments to and so on, so I'll read them, but I do much better when I read outside my field. I do a lot of literary reading. I do a lot of reading in, I don't know, history, things of that sort. Some mysteries, but it's the character studies that really interest me. So what? The last couple books I read that I really liked were Beartown. You probably never heard of it. Beartown by Frederick Buckman, who is a hot new writer in the field. He just wrote the sequel called Us Against You. It's a book about hockey, but it's not about hockey. I was very impressed with Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. It's a book about football. That's not about football. It's about the Iraqi War. Go figure. I read a book called Celine just recently by Peter Heller, who wrote Dog Star, a book I like a whole lot. See, I'm not touching a chord here at all, am I? It's just, this is for a writer, if you read a lot of fantasy, it's like, Busman's Holiday, forget it. So I don't do that. Certain writers I read anyway. I read Naomi Novik. I think she's terrific. She's very skilled. She writes fairy tales, reimagined fairy tales. And her acolyte, Catherine Arden. They're really good. I read Pierce Brown because I think Pierce Brown's a great writer. Young, good looking, I hate him. And he writes Greek tragedy in intergalactic space, with kingdoms rising and falling, and the planets are all populated by ruthless people, and a little like Dune, only more far-reaching. So I mean, there's lots of really good books out there. I read a lot of young adult fiction, actually. Some of it's quite good, some of it I'm not so happy with. But there's some really fine young writers there, so I read that too. Yes, ma'am.
What book had the biggest impact on your childhood?
That would be any book at any given time that I was reading. So, when I was very young, it was The Black Stallion. I absolutely loved those books. Don't ask me. I was young, but I still like horse stories, And then there was dog and horse stories. I read all the dog and horse stories, Big Red, Irish Red, Barry, Son of Kazan. Then I started reading science fiction. So I went from that to Tom Corbett, all of H.G. Wells, and then all the masters I read in 2 years. I swear I did. I read them all. Everything by Asimov, everything by Heinlein, everything by all those guys, because you could do that back then. There wasn't that much. And so these days you can't, sorry. But I used to be able to. And then after that I read European adventure stories, and I got all caught up in The White Company and in The Three Musketeers and in Prisoner of Zenda, and stories like that. And then I started reading American literary fiction from the 20s and 30s, Fitzgerald, and Hemingway, and Faulkner, and so forth. So, it's always something a little different, I think. If you're really a writer, you need to be a reader. If you're really a reader, then you're always looking for the next great thing. And so that's kind of my process. So maybe one more question and we'll call it a day. Well, you started, why don't you finish?
Who's your favorite character?
There you go. Who's my favorite character? What's the answer?
Alana.
No.
Yeah. Yourself.
Yeah. No, yeah, well, it's been said, absolutely. No, we're back to choosing between your children, so it's pretty hard to pick any one. I'm not even sure I could do that. I've never really been able to do that. I mean, I'm very fond of Ben Holiday in the Landover series because he's me. I write from his perspective, and it's easy, so, whatever I'm saying in that book is what I think, pretty much. That's my chance to, be polemic for a while. So anyhow, that is the best I could say. I kind of like the dog, Abernathy. Yeah, I like all the creatures. All right, well, so that's good enough for now. I think I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank you all for supporting me over the years and allowing me to continue to do what I love to do. And not many writers get that kind of longevity, but I've been fortunate, and I owe it to the readers and to the way you not only read the books yourself, but pass them down in the families, recommend them to your friends. I can never thank you enough for that, but I will thank you as best I can. Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. We'll get started signing now. Like I said earlier, if you do have 6 or more, then we'll have you ask you to wait towards the end. Make sure when you do come up, you have your cameras ready to go. Myself, Savannah, and Caitlin will help you out with all of that. We'll get started in just a few minutes.